Hey everyone, I'm Adrian and welcome back to my channel. In the previous video, we were able to successfully retrieve our users using Axios. Today, we will be implementing the pagination functionality for our user data table. And without further ado, let us begin. Okay, so before we continue, let me just open my inspect tool here and open up the console tab, and let's focus our attention to this warning error here. Each child in the list should have unique key. This warning is actually because we haven't set a key to each item that we have returned here in our users.map function. So for us to fix this, we're just gonna grab the second parameter of the map function, which is the key of each of these object here, the user. Okay, so when mapping objects in React, a unique key prop is required for each element in the map array. This is because React uses the key to keep track of each element in the array and determine which elements have been added, removed, or changed. Without a unique key, React may re-render the entire component instead of making efficient updates, leading to poor performance. Additionally, React will also throw an error or warning if a key is not provided. So that's why we're putting key here while we are looping this object. Now, if we reload this, we are not going to see that error anymore. We also need to change the dummy data that we have put previously and replace it with the actual data that's coming from the database. So let's do that. So we are now seeing a dynamic name, and we're also gonna do this with the email address column. There you go. All right. So we are gonna add the pagination function. Okay, so to do that, I needed to retrieve the if we go back to the network tab and see the preview of the response that we got from the server, we will actually see that there are also other data that was sent out, which are the links and the meta. These data objects are the key objects that we need to complete our pagination. So for us to achieve the pagination feature, we first need the links and the meta object to be represented as one of the states of our component. Basically, we're just going to create two separate state variables for the links and the meta object. So we're gonna do that. Let's map this out. So we have links and meta. So now that we have those two prepared, we're also gonna make the fetch users more dynamic. And my plan is I'm gonna actually have a variable here called link. And then instead of just using this one, I'm just gonna pass in the link. So let me cut that and then pass in the link. And then in our fetch users use effect here, I'm gonna transfer that. Okay. So now we have that prepared. We are gonna create the buttons for the pagination. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. In the meantime, we are going to create that here. So let's place the pagination right under the data table that we just created, somewhere around here. And as you can see, GitHub Copilot already suggesting things here. So let's go with that. Let's focus on writing the pagination UI here. Just follow along while I'm writing it down. We will begin by focusing on implementing the first, previous, next, and last buttons. These buttons will allow us to navigate between the different pages of our data table. And upon completing this task, we will then proceed to incorporate dynamic pagination numbers to fully realize the feature that we're creating. So now that we have this, we're going to use this to navigate through the pages of this pagination data here. So let's open up our dev tool here and reload this to see how the links are arranged. So for this one, links, if you recall, the data, links, and meta states that are currently mapped to the response we received from the server is in the network tab here. As we will be assigning values to each of these objects in our components data, links, and meta states, it will be more efficient to create a separate function that can be called whenever we need to set the value of these component states in a single function call. This is the purpose of the set paginated data that we are going to create here. Again, the component states that I'm referring to are the users, links, and meta. So let's write down the code. As you can see, we are accessing the actual value of the data, links, and the meta objects here. So basically, we need to get the links and data object from the API response to make our pagination works smoothly. Laravel's got us covered with this built-in pagination. Now we just gotta add that pagination logic to our React Datatable component. In the fetchUsers function, all we need to do is call the setPaginated function and pass in the response object. This allows us to update all relevant component states in one shot. In the meantime, let's make this justify end. So the first step would be add the Prev and Next buttons as they're common in paginations. Laravel's got us covered, so we just need to add it to the component. Next up, we'll add the next page function. See, it's got its own paginated link too, generated by Laravel. Don't worry about the Prev item being null here. It's normal to see it that way since we're on the first page of the paginated data by default. And since there may be times that the links parameter is empty, we need to have some kind of checking whether or not it's empty. So let's go ahead and add that logic here. This prevents the code from sending a request to the server if the fetchUsers function doesn't have a URL value for the API request. Now, let's add the onClick event for the previous page button. Well, I do want to show you something here. I wanted to emphasize a specific error that occurs when we add an empty value to the API request. We get a warning error from Axios because we're making an API request without passing a URL value to the GET function. In this case, the Prev link is still empty even after clicking the Prev button. So that's why it's important to add a check before running the axios.get function. This optimizes your code's performance. Simple yet powerful. Alright, enough of that. Let's copy and paste this. And then let's have this as the next page. And then next. Did we got that right? Next, links. Yes, it's actually next. Okay, so it's not gonna work yet because we haven't added an onClick event here. Next page. This one. Okay. Alright. You can see the Prev and Next buttons work now. But it's not just React. The logic comes from our Laravel REST API's backend pagination feature. And now we're gonna apply the same logic for the first and the last buttons. So let's write the code. Add some padding here. P5. Okay. I think that's better, I guess. I want to make a couple changes to the pagination UI here. So just follow along. Okay, I know we're missing the pagination numbers here, but there's a lot to cover on them, so we'll cover that in the next video. Now, we're adding the first page and last page functions, same as we did with the Prev page and the next page earlier. So just follow along. Okay, there you go. Next, next, next. Then we can also get back to the first, last. We are navigating from previous to next to first and last pages without knowing which page we're on. I'll paste the code snippet I prepared to help us track our page, including number of items and other details from the metastate. Pause the video to copy the code or create your own design for this. Again, I want to emphasize that all the data for current page, number of items, etc. comes from the meta object in the API response. In the next video, we will add the pagination numbers. And of course, they're gonna be displayed dynamically. So the last thing that we're gonna do for now is add the pagination numbers here. So we're gonna put it somewhere in between the previous and the next button here. And again, we're gonna do it with Tailwind, so just follow along. Looks like our data table component grew too big. To fix that, we'll move the pagination UI to a separate component file. What I wanted to do is create another component here, which is the pagination .jsx component. So there you go. And then I'm gonna paste this entire HTML here. There you go. And so it is expected that there are some state variables that will be missing when we make the pagination UI be separated from another file. The only thing we need to do here is to pass the states as component props. And it looks like the pagination component we added to the data table component is already throwing an error here. So let's fix that. So in this part, we're actually explicitly declaring all the props for the pagination component. Now let's explicitly pass the props. We need to pass the fetchUsers function as a prop to the pagination component, but we'll do that in the next video. And if you notice, the pagination component still works the same, and we now have a cleaner code. Alright, I'm glad you made it this far. In the next video, we'll add the pagination numbers logic to complete our pagination feature. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're new. It really helps the algorithm and supporting the channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.